This meeting is being recorded.
Yeah, excited. I'm sitting down with Jason and Lauren Vallotton here, and we're right in the middle of doing a deep dive talking about healthy sexuality. We just can't separate the abundant life or living a full life from having a healthy sex life. And so super stoked to sit down with them. Jason directs our transformation center. He also leads kind of our men's movement, Brave Co. here at Bethel Church. Lauren is married to Jason, is a mom, and does all kinds of stuff around Bethel. She's definitely one of the catalysts for kind of anything that's going on in our environment. But you guys just did a pretty phenomenal event a couple nights ago. You guys hosted a night for our church, and I know it went kind of out on the international waves too through Bethel TV. You guys were talking about parenting well, and specifically like parenting in the midst of a hypersexualized culture.
Yes.
Maybe we'll just start there. Like, how was that night? What were some of the things that you guys were emphasizing in that moment?
Yeah. Thanks, Lance. Yeah, it was really fun. We called the night Parent Well. We collaborated on this with our friends. They're good friends of ours, but also they direct a movement called Moral Revolution. And we collaborated with them on a project. We started on it about a year ago, where our hope was to gather the best content we could find for parents and actually package it so that a parent of a child of any age could get a hold of this resource and actually understand how to build a culture of healthy sexuality in their home and lead their kids through the journey of growing up with a healthy framework for their sexual development. And so we had a lot of fun interviewing different experts and doctors and compiling a lot of the information that the Zicks and us had gathered over the years. But when we were finished with the resource, we went, you know what, this is important and we want everybody to have this. But we realized that where we really wanted to start was in the church and actually really intentionally pouring into our local church community and gathering families and parents that are on the same journey with kids of all ages, of course, but actually commit as a community to learning about how to parent our kids well in their sexuality. So Tuesday night's event was really the kickoff of that. And it went great. We had local people in the room, of course, and then a lot of our Bethel Church family really is all over the place. And so we were thankful that Bethel TV was able to stream it. And yeah, it's actually on Bethel TV for free. Anybody that's a parent that would like to know what we talked about that night can go and access it there.
I love this. It's a new day. Maybe the church hasn't done the best job of approaching the subject of sex and sexuality. And it's maybe like taboo, or I don't know, it stays in the corner, or maybe we just talk about it when we see dysfunction manifesting. But I love what you guys are doing. You're getting ahead of the game and trying to unpack things and make it real. I think probably every human, whether they're a person of faith or not, is like, how do we talk to our kids about sex?
Oh yeah.
So Jason, what do you guys like? What kind of knowledge were you guys sharing there?
Yeah.
I don't know, some things that stood out to you as like, hey, here's some of the nuggets. Because again, I know you did a whole night. So
no, to me, it's about creating a culture, right? So I think where parents, what we've traditionally been taught is you have a sex talk. Did you have the talk?
The talk.
Like somehow that sex talk is so magical that you have it one time and the kids just go woof.
And they make all the best decisions after that. They don't ever make mistakes after the talk.
And the kids always love the talk. They're always like, that was the best thing that ever happened to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
No.
So, creating a culture from when kids are really young all the way up until, I don't know that we'll ever not have the conversation around sexuality because it's so much of who we are. Even with my adult kids, we're still talking about healthy sexuality inside of marriage. You and your wife are probably talking about what does a healthy sex life look like and how do we grow and express ourselves in that way. And so, giving parents real tools to start creating a culture of sexual health. And it even pertains to what we're talking about today. Everyone grew up in some kind of culture around this topic. A lot of people, the conversation was silent. In the church, it was silent. So you either grew up in a silent or saturated or conflicted.
Wow.
And so a lot of cultures, the Christian culture was just so silent, and it creates this awkward, shame-filled, fear-based. When it comes out, it's typically fear-based and shame-based, and other homes, it was just saturated. It was just everywhere. Lots of slang, lots of derogatory terms around sexuality, lots of that's what it meant to be a man. You go have sex with somebody, and it was kind of celebrated. And even for a woman, this is what a woman does, and it creates this culture of just perversion and promiscuity, and just creates so much pain, right? And so much dysfunction later on in life, because whatever that culture was at home, that's really what you grow up thinking, this is the goal. This is what life's supposed to be like. Isn't this what no one talks about sex, or everybody talks about sex. It's not a big deal. You just give it away.
Casual.
Super casual, but all of it has a real effect. So we're just helping people, helping parents, helping individuals learn, okay, what is healthy sex? What does it mean to be sexually healthy? And then how do we create a culture, a lifestyle that embraces that?
Yeah. And too, as Jason's talking, I'm thinking, when we were working on the Parent Well course, we got to interview this brilliant doctor. His name's Stanton Jones. He was a professor at Wheaton College for a lot of years, has a couple PhDs in different sexology, psychology, anyways, great, really cool guy, like just a great guy. One of the things that he said, which was really impactful for me when we were interviewing him for our course, was he said, sexual development is just a part of a child's character development. It's an aspect of their character development. And so when you create culture in your home for character development, it's with healthy sexuality in mind. It's part of what we're training our kids to be integrous about. It's just a part. And so he said the culture of the home is what's mission critical, because if the culture that you try to approach the conversation of sexuality with is different than the culture that you are approaching things like schoolwork or responsibility or how you treat your siblings, if it doesn't actually match, then you're not going to hit the mark, because our sexual development is just a component of our character development. And so one of the things that we're doing on Tuesday and that we really feel passionate about is helping parents understand what does contribute to a culture that facilitates really helpful and healthy conversations about sex. So we talk a lot about establishing cultures of connection, establishing cultures of open communication, and establishing cultures of curiosity, like permission to be curious. As human beings are created in the image of God, and he created us curious. That should be celebrated, and it should be led well in our parenting. So lots to say on that. It's a fun subject.
Yeah, that sounds beautiful. So maybe let's unpack it a little bit. Like, you're talking about a healthy culture in a home. What about just the specifics of what healthy sexuality can look like? Maybe in different contexts, like in a dating relationship, in a marriage context. Why don't you talk to those two kind of general areas? Well, I think there's a third, and that would be singleness. Somebody that's not dating at all. They're not in an active relationship.
Yep.
But maybe that could include dating. What would healthy sexuality look like in the context of a dating relationship from your guys' vantage point?
Can I say one umbrella statement? So I would give the umbrella statement that we are, as humans, we're created as sexual beings. It's part of our nature. So whether you are single or dating or engaged or married or divorced or widowed, we are all sexual beings. That's part of who we are. So it has, you being a sexual person, you being a sexual being, has nothing to do with your marital status. And so being healthy and whole inside of your sexuality is possible regardless of stage of life. So that would be kind of my umbrella statement, but specifically to dating.
Yeah, I think healthy sexuality, for starters, is you don't have shame around your sexual identity and your sexual history and your past, that you would feel so much love and joy and peace there. I think you're able to communicate your needs and your boundaries with that. So for instance, in a marriage, I'm able to communicate, this is where I'm at, and without any fear, without any shame. And she's also able to communicate that too, right? There's a running dialogue about the conversation about sex. What's okay with you? What's not okay with you? What do you like? What do you not like? How do I feel as a man? How does she feel as a woman? What it means to me. And I think when we start talking about dating, you're talking about healthy boundaries. What are we protecting? Why are we protecting it? What does it really mean? The actual physical act of sex, what does it mean? How far do I feel comfortable with going, and why? And that we're not using, in a dating relationship, we're not using sex as a way to move the relationship forward or to establish more connection, just physical connection. Because a lot of people crossed sexual boundaries in order to establish more connection, but you don't really create more sexual, you create more sexual connection, but you erode the trust out of the relationship because you're violating your boundaries and standards if you're a Christian. And I think for a single person, that again, what home did you grow up in, and what were you taught about sex? If you were taught that it was shameful, well, healthy sexuality, God's not shaming sex, so he would want you to feel comfortable and confident in the way that he made you, that you're not abusing it. So you're not trapped in pornography, you're not trapped in masturbation, that you actually have control over that, right? So that it's a gift later on in your life that you're able to give away, that you fought for something, and that it's not a stronghold for the enemy. So that you're clearly able to communicate and talk about it without feeling shame, and it becomes this great victory in your life.
Yeah. I think that the conversation, it is a really dynamic question, because, when somebody has to identify how can I walk in sexual wholeness as a single person and I still have needs. I think one of the things that we're taught, and one of the things that I grew up thinking anyways, I think it's a common thing to think, is that our sexuality is related to or equal to my sexual experiences. And so this idea that as a single person, what identifies me as being sexually whole or not is whether I am having healthy sexual experiences inside of whatever season I'm confined to. So, and I would say yes and no, because actually I think a healthy sexual identity comes from knowing our identity in God and how he created us. And our sexual identity, it goes back to, he created us male and female, and he created us with needs, and we get to have needs and express needs and meet needs in different ways in different seasons in order to stay inside of the design that God has for us. And understanding why the design is there, it is to protect us, it is to set us up for experiencing life to the fullest. It's to make sure that we're walking hemmed in by him and in safety. And I think it's in understanding what different types of intimacy are for. So every human has a need for intimacy, whether they are 5 years old or 10 years old or 55 years old or older. We all have needs for intimacy, but God gives us really clear boundaries about how to safely engage in intimacy depending on your season and depending on the covenant that you're experiencing, or the covenants that you have at different layers of relationship in your life. And so, my 2-year-old has a deep need for intimacy, and she's also a sexual being. She's discovering that she's a girl, and she's identifying what makes her different from dad. And she's recognizing what makes her similar to mom. And she's learning what to do when we're changing her diaper, and she's exploring her body, and we're able to tell her, God made you perfectly and beautiful. And that is where she's at in her sexual development right now. That is a healthy place for her to be at. That's Absolutely. She should be celebrating the fact that she's a little girl. And as we get older and even moving into that like dating season, I think it's where we get to explore having desires and needs in all different parts of who we are, and how to actually operate in health inside of that, ultimately for the purpose of understanding intimacy with our Father and understanding how he created us to be intimate with other people and why. And so I think, you know, we could talk forever about it because I do think it's just so multifaceted and it is really dynamic, and it's not one size fits all. But
well, no, there's so much you're saying that I actually would like to go deeper on. I think it's a good moment to weave in the cultural idea at play. Like, we do live in a unique culture.
yeah.
Briefly sharing some of my story, I think the way I grew up before Jesus, before being a person of faith, before discovering that I'm loved by God and growing up largely fatherless, and sex was actually one of the main venues to experience intimacy.
Yes.
And that very real power that happens in sex, of being chosen, of being valued.
Yeah.
I don't know that I would have understood how to develop intimacy at other levels, honestly. I can think of a particular relationship that I'm like, wow, I just completely blew that one. Like, an amazing person, but I just didn't know how to express intimacy any other way than, within the context of being sexually active. And Jason, you were talking about boundaries, and you were talking about that, like, sex doesn't have to be the determining factor of, okay, the relationship is developing and deepening. Can you guys talk about that? Like, what if somebody is there and they're having the awakening, like, whoa, this isn't healthy. Like, how do I bring shift maybe to a relationship they really value, and they actually want to stay in connection with this individual, but they know boundaries have been crossed. And then I think also weaving in like our cultural concepts of sexuality, like we're under the influence. So you guys are sharing so many nuggets. It's so much gold that I think we're doing really good. But maybe specifically to that one of like boundaries having crossed, what do I do?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think for starters, we have to understand the why. Because growing up, it's, especially in church, it's really easy to say, don't do it because it's a sin. God says no.
It's bad.
And parents love that, right? Because then they don't have to figure out why, and they don't have to explain anymore. And it's just such a lazy way to parent. But it's left kids with like, well, if you can't give me a real reason, then the world gets to define why you should. And why not give yourself to somebody if you really love them? And why not express yourself sexually? It's another way of having freedom and joy and enjoying the moment. The real challenge is when you give yourself fully to somebody and you open yourself up and you say, come experience me, come experience the depths, even emotionally, come experience the deepest depth of me, without the deepest level of commitment and the level of rejection, the level of pain, the level of, as much as I'm saying, I'm choosing you, and then to go, I don't want you anymore. Oof, buddy, that is so incredibly painful. And on top of that, how amazing is it when you get to marriage and you say, I have fought my whole entire life to give you this thing, and you're the only one. Now, let's talk through that, because a lot of people are like, oh gosh, I've crossed boundaries
I already blew it
in a dating relationship. And you got to understand that when you come into a relationship, and let's say that Lauren and I are dating, and I go, okay, God's way is the best way, Lauren. I'm I believe that having sex is not okay. I want to give you that for the first time. Well, every time I violate my core values, and even if we clean it up afterwards, what continues to happen is I'm eroding our trust inside of this relationship. And the challenge with eroding trust in a relationship is all of relationship ebbs and flows based upon trust. So even if Lauren said, no, I really love that sexual experience with you, and I wanted to do it too, it's not your fault. Now we don't trust us.
Yeah.
We don't trust us.
Ourselves.
So then when we get married, I was explaining this to one of my kids recently, who's they're about to jump into the stage of life where they're in a relationship. Well, your sex life in marriage is only as awesome as your trust life.
Yeah.
It's only as awesome as your trust life, because eventually that like crazy, euphoric exploring, that lessens. It gets less, especially the less I trust you. Because what becomes massive in a relationship is how much do you really know me day to day? How open can I be with you day to day? And when we begin to violate our conscience before we're ever even married, I'm saying to you, I'm not trustworthy. And I don't know how to trust you, and I don't know how to trust me. Okay, so that's part of the why. That's part of the why. Why uphold a standard in a relationship? Well, you're playing the long game.
Yeah.
You're setting yourself up for a marriage that's satisfying. So we would say this: anytime your level of intimacy exceeds your level of trust, you're creating anxiety and fear in the relationship.
Well, and you're describing, like, this is a big, we're talking about cultural norms right now.
Yeah.
Like, you're talking about the holiness of sexual intimacy that culture can't really speak to. Culture speaks to the euphoria and the, like, it feels good.
Yes.
And it's awesome. You're becoming a man or whatever. And yet sex was designed for something so much. I mean, I don't want to make it sound fragile, but it is this delicate, holy reality. Like, the level of trust that I have for an individual increases the level of sexual intimacy. And I know this as a married man. It's like, wow, when Rachel and I are connected and we're connected, we're open, we're sharing, the intimacy is very much there. Wow, the sex dynamic only enhances that.
Right.
And I don't have sex with her to increase the trust dynamic. It's a byproduct, right?
Yeah.
But culture doesn't understand that.
No.
This kind of holiness, this, like, we become one with that individual. Like, culture wants to sell this idea, it doesn't matter. Like, you don't need to really care. And what a tragedy. That's like almost 90% of sex.
Yeah.
Because here's the thing that you got to understand is culture says there's no consequence, there's only a benefit. There's no consequence, there's only a benefit in it. But so many people are finally experiencing, when they get married, there is a massive consequence. For one, not just the sexual experiences, but not being able to keep your word in other areas, even.
Yeah.
So, you're not trustworthy here, you're not trustworthy there. And there's very much a massive consequence for just giving yourself away all over the place. Well, what separates you? What makes you valuable then if you just give yourself away and there's nothing that you adhere to that says, this is who I am, this is what I will sacrifice for, this is what I'll fight for. And the other piece, which I know you want to say something.
No, you're good.
But the other piece is that you so reduce relationship down to this selfish act of, I want something from you.
Wow.
I want something from you. It's very sexualized.
I need something from you.
I need something from you. And the truth about really vibrant, so I want people to listen to this, really vibrant, beautiful, long-lasting, healthy relationship comes in the sacrificing, comes in the giving, it comes in the in having standards. It comes in building something beautiful, not in the what can I get today in this hour right now, the self-gratification. And so, you know, the amount of when I suppress or when I manage my sex drive, and I am using that as fuel to pursue my wife, to pursue my girlfriend, to pursue a relationship. So before I was married and before I was dating, that drive, right? That sexual drive that God put inside me, I use that as fuel to, okay, I need to get my finances in order. Okay, I need to get my life in order. Okay, I need to get my boundaries figured out because I want to mate. I want to have sex. I want to have a family. And then when I'm dating, I use that sex drive as fuel. I don't go satisfy it. I don't go masturbate, or I don't go have sex with her and then quench that. I use that as fuel, right, to do a great job to move us towards this next level. And then when I'm married, I don't, even if I want to have sex and she's not at that point, I don't just go and masturbate in the bedroom and take care of that. I use that as fuel to build connection in other areas, which drives us closer and closer together.
Yeah.
And there's so much self-gratification going on in the world that we are shortcutting ourselves from deep, really satisfying relationships that only comes through the long-term building and growing in and the management of your sex drive. So, you know, the world's saying there's no consequence. There's no consequence in all of this gratification. And so many people, I mean, are finding out that the only way that you don't feel a consequence is if you make it of no value.
Yeah.
If you completely devalue the whole entire experience altogether.
Yeah.
And there's a massive consequence in that.
And I think too, even then, I mean, people who have fully bought in to the lie that sex is about self-gratification or it is of no consequence outside of marriage, you know, even then people are walking around in so much pain and so much brokenness, and there is a void. And so I think culture is, you know, it's my opinion that there's a massive agenda that's trying to tear down the structure of family that God created for us to live inside of. And the lie that life is really just about satisfying your desires and that you are just supposed to go and figure out how to get your own needs met is playing into this lie that says, you know, it's not a better way. There's not a better way. And I think, you know, what we would want to say to somebody, even somebody, to go back to your original question, Lance, somebody who's finding themselves having cross boundaries in a relationship and coming to this awareness of, whoa, this is leading to a lot of pain. I'm in a lot of pain inside of this relationship. I have a ton of fear of rejection. I am so insecure inside of this relationship, or I have so much shame about what we're doing or what we are here in this space. I think the beauty is that, you know, we always say forgiveness restores the standard. And there's a moment, I mean, there's repentance restores the standard. Repentance restores the standard. So does forgiveness.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Yeah, forgiveness is in there, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's in there. It's a process of repentance.
Yeah. So my point being, you know, what Jesus offers us is this incredible redo. He offers us this incredible opportunity to come face to face with truth. And in our exchange with him, he can take all of the brokenness, he can take all of those lies and exchange them for this incredible opportunity to begin again. And I think, you know, whether you're staying in a relationship or whether you're ending a relationship to pursue health, the journey is a trust building journey. You start back at the beginning. So if you're dating this girl, or maybe you're engaged, you're going to be married and you've crossed a bunch of boundaries and you're full of guilt and shame. Well, you're repentance and experiencing the Father's forgiveness is what empowers you to go back and begin at building trust again. And I think, it's a lie that we're too far gone. Nobody's too far gone. Nobody has crossed too many boundaries to start over and to begin again. And I think, the trust building journey is the gift, because it's in the trust building and in the work that you do to build trust in order to grow in your levels of intimacy that sets you up to be a healthy family, which is God's best design for humanity. So anyways, yeah, so much we could say.
Yeah, the coolest part is trust is not built by the absence of mistakes, but also by how we clean up a mess, right?
Yeah.
And so, when you make a mistake and you figure out, okay, what led to this mistake? Any mistake. Could be the sexual thing, could be, any mistake. Yeah, lying. And you figure out what led to that. Oh, it was my insecurity. I wanted to feel more secure with you, and I pushed the relationship and I pushed past boundaries. And man, well, when you go back and you go, okay, what am I going to do for my insecurity next time? And you really fix that mistake. What happens is it builds trust between us.
Yeah.
Because we innately know people aren't perfect.
Right.
But if I know how to, if you know how to solve problems and I know how to solve problems, we're going to be okay. We're going to grow and we're going to go from glory to glory. And so, trust is also built through repeated success. So I make a mistake, and part of the repentance process is I'm able to repeat success over and over and over again later on. So a lot of people have messed up. I've messed up. Lauren's messed up in the past in different areas of our lives, but we've gone to, okay, I'm an owner. So I'm going to own this problem. I'm going to own it as mine. I'm not going to make any excuses. I'm going to see what was wrong. I'm going to get to the root of the issue. And now I'm going to repeat success over and over and over again. And that's the process of repentance.
In your work in the counseling space, what have you discovered relative to sexual unhealth? So when somebody is really, they're in an unhealthy place with their sexuality, what kind of things are you seeing that are transformative? Maybe it's the discovery of past trauma. Maybe it's what you're describing right here is like helping give people tools to like establish new patterns and norms.
Yeah, I would see most people were never taught how to get their needs met in a healthy way.
Okay. There you go.
Never taught that they were valuable enough. So when you grow up in a home, very, very young age, if you were taught like you're not important, your needs don't matter, you're not valuable, then you become a survivor, and you fall into cycles of addiction because you're in pain, and you have to medicate pain at some level, at some point, at some time. And when addiction starts in our lives, and I'm not just talking about addiction, but we start violating ourselves when we can no longer bear being present in our own life. Wow. And so that's where eating disorders come in. That's where addiction comes, sexual addiction. That's where using women or women using men. I can no longer bear being present in this life, and I need something to help control this, something to help get me out of this pain. And so people get into relationship and they've never learned how to even identify my need, or how to go, okay, I'm feeling insecure right now. Great. Well, how would I even go about feeling secure? How do I create healthy identity? And how do I communicate to her, I feel pain, or I feel lonely, or I feel shame? And so really breaking it down into, can you communicate your core emotions? Can you first identify what are my core emotions? And you could Google it, core emotion wheel. And then what needs do humans have? Well, we have body, soul, and spirit needs. And can I clearly identify those needs? And then can I clearly identify when I want to violate those needs, right? That's self-awareness. And because all of us are tempted to.
Yeah.
So for instance, I'll try to make this simpler. If you're in a dating relationship and you're tempted to talk your girlfriend in whatever way you want to, start kissing, into having sex with you, and you know that that's not right, you know that that's not where you want to take it, that's not evil to have that thought. It's not evil to be tempted in that way. It's just simply a need. There's a deeper need that you need to get at. Okay, why do I want to drive this relationship in a way that I don't want to go? Oh, I want to feel more connected. Okay, that's not evil. Or I want to feel more known. That's not evil. Well, there's a lot of ways to feel known. There's a lot of ways to feel more connected. Your brain is just going, this is the fastest way.
Yeah.
This is the easiest path. So there are lots of times in my relationship with Lauren when we were dating that, I wanted to push the boundaries. And I just had to go, wait, why do I want to push the boundaries? Oh, I feel really insecure. So insecurity would be a driver. Here's what I think, Lance, actually, is most of what people think is their sex drive. They're like that out of control, that wild out of control is actually these needs that are masked as their sex drive. So
Sure.
Incredible insecurity, deep insecurity will drive you to do things. It makes you feel like, God, if I could just have sex right now with her, I would. Or for a man, I feel insignificant, or I don't feel powerful. Yeah. Well, I could feel super powerful if I slept with a woman right now.
Yeah.
Loneliness for women, I think, is huge.
So what people are marking as, well, this is just what a man is. This is just my sex drive that God gave me. No, actually, it's all those little needs that you don't know how to meet, that you haven't met, and coming up and rising up and getting met in this relationship. The problem is you're not really actually meeting the need. People, listen, you're not actually fixing the problem. So you go and you sleep with her, and you got to sleep with hundreds of hers because the need rises up tomorrow. And she's got to sleep with hundreds of me's to feel significant and important and powerful. And you're not actually meeting the real need. And so, man, what the world's selling you
is such a lie.
It's such a lie because you never are satisfied. So you're living this super unsatisfied, painful life, no matter how many times you give it away.
Anything you want to speak to there, Lauren?
No, that's where my brain was going, was just that, our awareness of physical needs are very elementary. Like that's like the primitive way to live, right? Like a baby comes out and the baby knows when it's hungry or when it's got a poopy diaper or when it's tired. And those are the needs that the baby's aware of. And those are the needs the baby knows how to express.
Yes.
When we as humans are not taught as young people how to understand the other types of needs that we have, emotional, spiritual,
mental,
all of that. If we're not taught, and most of us aren't, right? Like I wasn't, nobody sat me down and said, let's talk about your body, soul, and spirit needs, Lauren. Like, here's how we break that down. I had great parents. They did not have the language for that. So most of us are learning much later in our life that we have these different sets of needs, and nobody has taught us how to communicate them or get them met. And so our default is to go back to the physical, very primitive, very elementary level needs that we have. And we're very aware of our sex drive because it's physical. We're very aware of our hunger because it's physical. We're very aware of, a lack of touch because it's physical. And so I think when we're immature in the more complex areas of what makes us human, then we do have to fall back on something. And unfortunately it is largely physical. It's largely physical. And that gets us into big trouble because that physical, the sexual experiences that we have for people are really supposed to be reserved for the deepest level of intimacy, which would require the deepest level of understanding of your emotional and spiritual needs, even beyond your physical needs.
You know what it boils down to is we become consumers.
Right.
So we consume when we don't really know how to meet the needs. We eat too much, we sleep too much, We, consume. I start to consume hers. In, the definition for a man is a man gives more than he takes. And that's just one. Like, I produce more than I consume.
Man.
Yeah, a healthy man. I produce more than I consume. And you can start to see yourself when you're in unhealthy cycles, you're a consumer.
Yeah.
Consume.
Yeah.
So instead of a producer.
I love this, you guys. There's so much gold in here. I do think that we're gonna land this. I think we've definitely traversed all the stuff I wanted to get at.
A few things.
Yeah, you guys, I love that. It feels like the bottom line is being a healthy person and dealing with ourselves and recognizing we're complex beings that have needs. And yeah, this just feels like gold, like I said. So thank you guys for your time. I want to ask though specifically how people can access that resource that you guys are working on. If that's forthcoming, or is that already available? It sounds like a lot of gold therein. So
yeah. So the resource that we were talking about is definitely specifically aimed at parents.
Yep.
Raising kids. It's called Raising Kids in a Hypersexualized Culture. I mentioned this, but our friends at More Revolution are the ones that actually produced it. So morerevolution.com, it would be the website to go to. And for information about that project, you could email parentwell@morerevolution.com.
Great. That's perfect. Yeah, we'll be sitting down with Cole and Caitlin too in the midst of this theme that we're in.
Great.
Yeah, guys, really appreciate your time. If people want to find you on social media, how would they do that? If they want to get a little bit more connected to you and stuff that you guys are putting out?
Yeah, Instagram, J Vallotton and
L
Vallotton for Lauren. We have a podcast that we're working on, so that'll be released next month. And
that's exciting.
Yeah, super cool.
And I'm sure people would be able to find that podcast if they're following your Instagram.
Yeah,
for sure. For men too, I would say Brave Co. That would be a good place for men to connect with Jay, is through the Brave Co platform.
Yeah, and they can go to braveco.men on Instagram or braveco.org to
perfect.
Yeah. To get help.
Yeah, thank you guys. You guys are changing the world, man.
Thanks,
you're making this stuff, you're making it accessible for the masses, and this stuff should definitely not be kept in the corner or hidden. This stuff has got to be out there where anybody gets access. So appreciate your wisdom and your journey. Love you guys. And with that, we're going to say adios.
Okay. Bye.
Thanks. And